Welcome, midnight listeners. Tonight we drift into a chapter of history that most would rather forget. You begin by seeing only mist, a pale ribbon of it tangled in the branches of skeletal trees, though the trees do not sway and the mist does not lift. It simply clings low to the ground, like something mourning beneath breath. The air is not cold, but you shiver. It isn't silence you're hearing. It's the memory of screaming long since devoured by wind. This place was once a path. Now it is a corridor between stakes. Tall ones, weathered wood split and stained from the inside out. They are not empty, and they are not forgotten. Before we drift deeper, consider marking this video for those who fall asleep best beside forgotten truths. Subscribe if you return nightly to the quiet horror of history. Let me know your local time, and if you're still awake at the end. Now exhale and let history's cold breath settle on your skin. You walk slowly. You do not step off the path. On either side forms tilt and stretch long bones stripped by birds, cloth shredded by time, mouths twisted mid-sound. It is not the forest that groans. It is what's left of the people Vlad left behind. Vlad III of Wallachia. Vlad the Impaler does not exist in legend because of fiction. He exists there because history failed to contain him. You do not invent vampires to explain a man like Vlad. You invent myths because the truth cannot be held in words alone. The forest of the impaled was not metaphorical. It was not exaggeration. Somewhere near Targovishte in the late spring of 1462, tens of thousands of stakes were prepared by hand. Their sharpened points rose from soil that had been freshly soaked in blood. The bodies came next. Some were Ottoman soldiers captured bound broken. Others were not. Traders, servants, dissenters, and children too young to understand the prince's idea of order. Each one chosen, each one pierced through the lower abdomen or chest, raised upright and left to die in the air, slowly. It takes a long time to die by impalement. That was the point. You pass one stake that still leans toward the earth. What clings to it now is not flesh, but something like parchment. It flutters. You look closer, skin peeled and sun-dried, the color of candle wax. It has no name left. Historians still wonder whether Vlad created the forest purely for defense. Some accounts claim it was a warning to the Ottomans. This is what waits for your army. Others argue it was ritual, a demonstration of absolute power, not over cities, but over the concept of mercy itself. But the number is rarely disputed. 20,000 stakes, 20,000 people, all positioned with deliberate spacing. Some high, some low, children displayed beneath their mothers, men strung like banners above the gates. Vlad did not just kill, he curated. There is no wind but one stake creaks. You do not look at the face. You keep moving. Your body has stopped asking questions. You wonder how it started. Not with a war, but with a letter. The Ottomans demanded tribute. Vlad refused. He invited their envoys into his court and asked them to remove their turbans. They declined. So he had the turbans nailed into their skulls. It was not yet war. It was an introduction. The scent is faint, but you notice it now, not decay but earth. As though the ground itself has absorbed what once dripped here. Perhaps it has. Soil remembers differently than people do. You try to count the stakes. You stop. Some say Vlad drank blood. More likely he drank wine while blood dripped from the bodies of his guests. He believed in theatrics, in the horror of stillness, and in making fear so permanent it could be inherited. A chronicler once wrote that the birds sang in the forest of the impaled, but only because they had learned not to listen. You look down. In the undergrowth fingers, Not whole hands, just enough to suggest that something once tried to claw free. They didn't. You've entered the forest, but you haven't reached the garden yet. You step further, though your feet grow heavier. The ground is soft in ways it should not be. The kind of soft that speaks of what lies beneath layers of cloth, of skin, of memory, that no longer bleeds but still stains. Vlad did not rise to power quietly. You see his crown now, not as metal, but as something hammered onto the skull of a corpse long before it was meant to rot. A prince of a fractured land born between enemies. Wallachia was not a kingdom. It was a pressure point between greater empires. The Hungarians to the west, the Ottomans to the east, and Vlad between them with knives in both hands and none behind his back. His father, Vlad II, wore the dragon's insignia, Drackle, the order sworn to defend Christianity even as they bartered with enemies. His son Dracula learned early that oaths were only useful when wrapped around someone else's throat. You walk past a post set lower than the rest. The stake is almost buried now, but the bones remain, small, curved. The ribs like spider legs curled inward. A child. No one marked the age. Vlad didn't. When Vlad was young, he and his brother were taken by the Ottomans as hostages. Not prisoners, guests they called them. Pawns in a political game too large for boys. There he learned how power behaves behind smiles. There he watched his brother adapt, and there he learned to wait. He returned to Wallachia not as a son, but as a blade. What he found was chaos. Nobles, boyars scheming, families turning faster than seasons. Vlad made his first statement quietly. He invited them to a feast. They arrived in fine robes, seated with pride. He served them well, and then locked the doors. Some were stabbed, others were impaled. The rest were marched, still clothed in silk, up into the mountains to build his fortress by hand. Most died along the way. Their bones are said to lie beneath the stone walls of Poenari. The castle remains. So do the whispers. You pause now beside another stake, this one taller, wider. You recognize a difference, though it takes a moment. This one was meant to last. Reinforced, smoothed. A body once displayed here wasn't just a punishment. It was a monument. Historians still wonder whether Vlad selected some victims, not for what they'd done, but for how they'd look when they died. Strong men bound upside down, priests in their vestments, nobles in embroidered coats, statement executions, art-directed death. You touch the stake, it's cold. Vlad didn't need armies to secure power. He needed fear. And he crafted it not through rumor but architecture, not through terror but presentation. Some chroniclers claimed he impaled his enemies so carefully that they lived for hours, even days. The stakes were rounded, not sharp. They were inserted with precision to avoid vital organs. Death was not an end. It was a display. And the people watched. You walk through an arch now, two stakes bent toward each other, as if in greeting. At their peak, a tangle of ribs lashed with iron. Someone arranged them to hold shape even after the rest gave way. There's no blood left here, but there is something wetter than silence. You stop at a stone. It's just outside the path. You think it's a marker, but no names are carved. Just a single groove, deep and red like it was cut and never filled. The stone doesn't speak, but the air around it is thicker. Vlad's rule wasn't long. His throne was taken, then retaken again and again. But while he held it, he ruled with the weight of silence. No appeal, no mercy, no second strike. A servant once stole a cup. Vlad had it nailed to his hand and watched him drink from it until the scream stopped. A woman once complained of the smell from the corpses outside the palace. Vlad had her impaled next to them, so she could become part of what offended her. His laws were strict, his punishments unsparing, and the people obeyed, not because they agreed, but because they had seen what happened when you didn't. Behind you now, the trees seem to breathe. You do not turn. The crown Vlad wore was not forged in gold. It was stitched from fear, bound in loyalty, extracted like marrow from the bone. It sat heavy on a head that smiled rarely, and only in the direction of someone dying. And still some called him savior, defender of the cross. He pushed the Ottomans back. He held the borders. But to hold the border, he burned the villages behind it. If you retreat through a ruined land, you do not return. A single figure ahead of you now hung low on a half-broken post. The stake pierces through the ribcage. The arms are folded as though posed. The head is gone. You do not wonder where it is. You do not wonder why. You only keep walking. The path thins. The stakes grow closer together like teeth along a jawline ready to bite. The air hangs thick, not with scent, but with memory. A memory that does not fade, only sinks deeper into the soil. You stop to rest your hand on another stake. It's blackened not by fire, but by time. Its tip still bears the faint groove where flesh once tore. You imagine the sound. Not the scream that came later, but the wet crack when the body first slid down. Vlad did not build fear overnight. He cultivated it layer by layer, corpse by corpse, until even rumors wore armor. By the time Ottoman scouts reached the outskirts of Targovishte, they didn't face an army. They faced a forest not of trees but of people. 20,000 of them, lined in rows. Peasants, soldiers, women, children, enemies, thieves, anyone who had displeased him, dishonored him, disobeyed him. They had no unifying trait but death. The scouts halted. They reported to the Sultan what they saw: a valley of corpses upright, swaying and rotting in rhythm with the wind. Birds nested in eye sockets. Wolves circled but did not touch. Even beasts knew this was not a feast, it was a warning. Mehmed II, conqueror of Constantinople, turned back. You walk through that forest now, not a legend, not a metaphor. Every post whispers a name that history forgot. Every skeletal grin confirms that someone believed they were special, right up until the stake found their spine. Vlad didn't kill to erase his enemies. He killed so everyone else would see. And remember, your foot strikes something. A skull split clean through the center, carved, not broken by time but by blade. A clean strike front to back. You pick it up. The edges are too smooth to be random. Execution, not accident. It was said Vlad once had a golden cup placed in the town square. No guards, no chains, just the knowledge that anyone who stole it would die. It remained untouched for years. Order through terror. You set the skull down, but it watches you still. You pass a cluster of stakes woven together like a lattice. Arms still cling where tendons turn to leather. Here the victims were displayed in groups, not impaled randomly, but arranged. Height, age, gender. Vlad made art from agony. And then music. You hear it faintly, not real music. A suggestion, like a throat humming behind the trees. You tell yourself it's the wind, but you know better. This is a place where pain once echoed so loudly it carved itself into the wood. You come upon a large post split at the top like a forked tongue. It held someone once who struggled too much. You wonder if that made Vlad smile. He did not shy from struggle, he preferred it. The Turks called him Hazikla Bey, the Impaler Lord. He wore that name like a title. Western chroniclers turned him into a monster, Eastern ones into a savior. And somewhere between those two extremes lies the truth: he was not inhuman. He was worse. He was deliberate. Further down the path you reach a shallow pit. The remains here are jumbled, less organized. This is where the stakes were removed, bodies dumped. Not all were buried. Some still wear rings on their fingers. One has a chain wrapped around its throat. You wonder if that was the crime or the punishment. You kneel beside the pit. Your reflection stares back at you from a puddle. For a moment, it's not your face you see. It's his, eyes sharp, brow heavy, lips neither smiling nor scowling, just waiting. Always waiting, as if he knows you would have done the same. After all, history doesn't remember mercy, but it remembers him. You rise. The forest ends not with a gate, but with silence. There are no birds, no insects, just the steady thud of your own heart, louder now, like it's answering something. Vlad lived a life surrounded by enemies foreign and domestic. The Ottomans wanted his land. The boyars wanted his head. His own people wanted peace. He gave them order instead. He ruled not by the sword but by the shadow of the stake. And he ruled long enough for the earth to become soaked with names no one dares pronounce now. You step beyond the last stake, but you do not feel safer, because behind you is a silence that waits to be broken, and in front of you is the world that let him happen. You enter the edge of a town that Vlad once ruled Wallachia's beating heart in the 15th century. Cobblestones run slick with age, and the air carries a faint metallic tang, like a memory of old blood refusing to wash away. No cries of children, no laughter of market women, only the creak of wooden signs swinging above shuttered shops. This was the price of safety. Vlad did not rule by charm nor by alliance. He ruled by absolute consequence. In his court, every action had a response, and the people understood it was better to live in fear than to die in chaos. He held court in a hall where the floor once gleamed with polished pine, but it wasn't the wood that visitors remembered, it was the corpses, impaled while he ate. It said Vlad dined calmly among the dead, not out of madness, but to make a point. If justice was to be administered, let it be seen, let it smell, let it last, and if the guilty begged, he sipped his wine. One story tells of an envoy who refused to remove his turban in Vlad's presence, claiming it was his faith. Vlad nodded smiling and had the turban nailed to his skull so it would never fall. Respect, he believed, must be permanent. You pass a broken wall etched with symbols. Beneath it, bones peek from a shallow grave only now disturbed by centuries of erosion. Vlad's enemies were not always foreign. Some were close, too close. He held a feast for the boyars Wallachia's nobility. They laughed, ate, toasted to his reign, and by morning they were chained. He forced them to march barefoot to Poenari, where they built his mountain fortress brick by brick. Those who survived became his servants. Those who didn't became his warning. You stop at a well, the water is black, not because it's poisoned, but because it remembers. It remembers the hundreds thrown in. Wives who cried too loudly, priests who blessed too slowly, servants who spilled a drop too many. Order to Vlad was sacred, and sacred things required sacrifice. The church didn't oppose him, not openly. He claimed to be a defender of the Christian world fighting the Ottomans holding the eastern flank of Europe. But the church knew better than to sanctify a man who made death an institution. They said nothing. In silence he built his legacy. You reach Poenari's path. The stone steps wind upward like a snake climbing a crag. Legends say Vlad's wife once flung herself from the battlements here pursued by Turks. She chose the rocks over capture. It is fitting. For Vlad, there were only two choices: command or perish, and anyone who chose differently didn't choose for long. The fortress walls are crumbling now, but the view remains. From here you see forests where the stakes once stood, villages where screams once echoed, rivers that once ran red until they forgot. But you don't forget, because Vlad never let them forget. His letters still exist. Cold, articulate, strategic. In one, he writes proudly of impaling 23,884 Turks. Not with exaggeration, but with precision. He knew the numbers, knew the cost of power, and he paid it, not in gold, in bodies. You descend the mountain trail slower now, because something is watching, not someone. Something, not a vampire, not some fanged myth born of firelight and drunken tales, but the truth that inspired them, the truth that made them necessary. Vlad did not drink blood. He did something worse. He drained hope. The vampire myth came later. Bram Stoker borrowed his name, gave him fangs, a cape and a castle. But the real Dracula, Vlad III of Wallachia, needed no fiction. He was the nightmare, a prince whose mercy was feared more than his wrath, a ruler who made devils seem inefficient, a man who found peace only in the silence that followed a scream, and here in the ruins that silence endures, a cold, immortal hush, the kind that no legend can bury. You walk on, but now you understand vampires don't hide in castles. They build kingdoms with blood and law and wood sharpened to a point. The deeper you move into the legend, the more it stops feeling like myth. It becomes administrative. You find yourself standing before a faded parchment, sealed, signed and dated. One of Vlad's surviving letters. Not to a lover, not to his people, but to a fellow ruler. A diplomatic report. In it, Vlad details down to the man, to the location, to the stake height, the precise method of impaling 23,884 captured Ottomans. There is no pride in his tone, no joy, just order, as if he were cataloguing shipments of lumber. This was not madness, it was policy. And it worked. The forests of impaled bodies, real, historical, undeniable, formed a wall of deterrence. When Ottoman scouts found their comrades skewered along the Danube, they turned around. Soldiers deserted. Officers hesitated. Even Sultan Mehmed II, conqueror of Constantinople, recoiled and withdrew when faced with Vlad's grotesque handiwork. This wasn't horror for horror's sake. It was statecraft by spectacle, and it made him untouchable for a time. But no reign of terror lasts forever, not even one built on so many corpses. Eventually the whispers grew louder than the silence. Boyars plotted, enemies amassed. Even allies grew uneasy. The King of Hungary, Matthias Corvinus, imprisoned Vlad under political pressure, forging documents that painted him as a traitor to Christendom. And just like that, the Prince of Terror became a prisoner of peace. But Vlad was not forgotten. His legend flourished in captivity. Pamphlets printed in Germany told wild tales of him boiling men alive, mutilating women, feeding children to their mothers. The exaggeration served a purpose to make him into a moral warning, a pagan monster wrapped in Christian robes. Europe needed Dracula, not the real one, but the idea of one. A monster that could be hated cleanly, a villain with no ambiguity, so they created him. Stoker came centuries later, but the groundwork was already laid. A bloodthirsty ruler steeped in the occult, drinking blood, sleeping in coffins, unable to die. Fictional Dracula was seductive, eternal, and oddly tragic. The real Vlad, there was no seduction, no romance, no red-lined cape, only intention. And blood, so much blood. You walk past a church that still bears his sigil, the dragon dracal given to his father by the Order. It's faded, chipped by weather and time. A tourist attraction now. They sell keychains. You speak to a local priest and he shrugs. Yes, Vlad protected us from the Turks, he says, but he also nailed the priests who disobeyed him to their own altar doors. So, complicated man. Complicated. That's one word for it. You find the scholar's notes left in a museum corner, ignored by the crowd. The historian writes that Vlad's reign is one of the clearest examples of how brutality can stabilize a collapsing society. He compares him to Robespierre, to Stalin, to Caesar, then crosses out Caesar, because Vlad didn't want empire. He wanted control. Complete, unquestioned, unforgettable control. And that meant creating not just fear, but legacy. Even in death, he left a mystery. He was reportedly killed in battle, ambushed by his own men, or possibly assassinated by boyars. His body was buried, then moved, then vanished. No one can confirm his final resting place. They've tried. They've dug in monasteries sifted through bones. But his grave is empty. He left no corpse behind, only a reputation that fed on time. Which brings you here, to the center of the forest, where once so many screams rose they shook the trees. You kneel and press your hand to the soil, still cold, still quiet. The stakes are gone now, rotted or burned, but the forest remembers. The roots drank what spilled. The trees absorbed what echoed. And if you listen hard enough, you swear you hear it. The groan of wood under weight, the ragged final exhale, the hiss of flesh split by oak. You look up. The sky above is empty, but something watches still. Because Vlad's true victory was not a battle or a throne. It was memory. He became a shape in the dark, a whisper in the trees, a name you don't say at night, not because he's a vampire, but because he isn't. He was real, and that's far, far worse. You walk out of the forest with the quiet weight of something unfinished. Vlad's story doesn't end. It lingers. It echoes across centuries, twisted through stories stitched into folklore, until it no longer resembles history but haunts it. Because here is the savage truth. Vlad the Impaler never drank blood. He never turned into a bat. He never avoided sunlight or slept in a coffin lined with native soil. But the world needed him to. Needed a face for evil. A fang silhouette to project fear onto. Something that made sense of cruelty by wrapping it in the supernatural. The vampire myth sanitized the man. It made his evil fun. Made it consumable. It turned a prince of systemic calculated brutality into a Halloween costume. Let's be clear. The real Vlad didn't want your neck. He wanted your obedience, your silence, your loyalty. And if he didn't get it, he wanted you gone. Not through whispers in the night, but by staking your body in public. He ruled by demonstration. Fear as a civic tool. Imagine a world where the state hangs your corpse for 40 miles so that even your memory obeys. That was Vlad's Romania. And yet, he is still revered by some. In modern Romania, he's celebrated in parts of the country as a national hero. Statues of him stand tall commemorating his defense against the Ottoman Empire. Tour guides call him Dracula with a smirk, but speak his real name with respect. Sometimes with caution. There's a monument in Targoviste marking the spot where he impaled thousands. It's a park now. Children ride bicycles beside the stone plaque. Someone once asked why there wasn't more made of the site. Why no museum, no reenactments, no wall of remembrance? The answer: there's too much. Too much blood to explain. Too much horror to curate. And so, like many dark truths, it's buried. Vlad's Castle Poenari Fortress still stands high above a cliff, accessible by climbing 1,480 stone steps. Most tourists don't make it all the way. The air is thin, the forest too quiet, the silence presses. Locals say you can feel something watching near the top, something that doesn't blink, doesn't move, just waits. That's the thing about real monsters. They don't need to chase you. They wait for history to catch up, and it always does. Even now, the image of the vampire is far more palatable than what Vlad actually was. The vampire asks you to fear seduction. Vlad asks you to fear systems. What if horror isn't a creature with fangs? What if horror is a man with law and authority, with a bureaucracy of pain and the time to organize it? That's the story people avoid telling, because it's not supernatural. It's worse. It's logical. So here you are, a few steps away from the past, and you realize something. The forest may be empty. The stakes gone, the bones long returned to earth. But the message remains: obey or be remembered only by your screams. That's not myth, that's policy. And Vlad made sure no one forgot. Not the trees, not the earth, not even you. So the next time someone jokes about Dracula and blood-sucking legends, remember, that's the bedtime story. The real one is still in the ground, still whispering, still watching, still waiting. Because Vlad the Impaler didn't drink blood. He just made it scream. Welcome, midnight listeners. Tonight we drift into a chapter of history that most would rather forget. Imagine a room no larger than a coffin, with no windows, no breeze, and a single oil lamp sputtering beside your breath. The air smells of mold and lampblack. The floor beneath you is hard-packed earth, and your bedding, a thin mat permanently damp, sticks to your skin. You do not move yet. You lie awake as you have for weeks, months, perhaps longer, in the tense stillness that precedes every dawn. You are a Shengyuan, a licentiate, one of the lowest rungs on the ladder of imperial examination. A scholar of merit, they say. But titles weigh more than flesh here. You have passed the county-level exam, and now you wait, always waiting for the next. In theory, the path leads to glory. In reality, it winds deeper into isolation. You do not remember when the ambition stopped being yours. It belongs now to your father, your grandfather, and the bones beneath them. You inherited their debts, their shame, and their scrolls. The ink under your fingernails is not yours, it is ancestral. This is Nanjing. The Ming capital breathes through stone lungs. Outside your chamber, other scholars are stirring. You can hear their movements, gentle, ritualistic. Someone coughs softly, someone else weeps. The walls absorb both. You light the lamp. Its glow is the color of fatigue. Around you, 4 walls lean in as if to whisper. There is no furniture, only your mat, a wooden box with brushes, and a manuscript you've rewritten 17 times. You open it to the first page, again. Though your mouth is dry, you begin to mouth the lines, quietly, as always. If you forget a word, your lips keep moving, as if your ancestors are watching. Before we drift deeper, consider marking this video for those who fall asleep best, beside forgotten truths. Subscribe if you return nightly to the quiet horror of history. Let me know your local time. And if you're still awake at the end, now exhale and let history's cold breath settle on your skin. You stand. You bow to the paper. A whisper of ritual before breakfast. Not out of piety, but necessity. Rituals are how you remain real. They remind you that the walls are not yet inside your head. Today is not an exam day, but that means little. You study the way others breathe, constantly, obsessively. The Confucian classics have become like blood in your mouth, familiar, metallic, and impossible to swallow. There is no bell to begin your routine. There is only hunger. You reach into a cloth pouch and remove a rice cake, yesterday's offering from your mother, dried and wrapped in mulberry leaf. It smells faintly of smoke and resignation. You chew slowly, eyes fixed on the manuscript. Behind your wall, someone recites aloud. The superior man is cautious in speech. His voice breaks before the sentence ends. You do not react. You never do. Outside, the sun lifts like a blade, slow and blunted by fog. Nanjing's alleys remain shrouded. The mist muffles all footsteps except those of the examination officials whose shoes are lacquered and loud. Today you are not one of them. Not yet. Perhaps not ever. You feel the tremor in your left hand again. It's worse this morning. You clench it into a fist. It used to be the calligraphy hand. Now the characters emerge misshapen, bent like crippled birds. The inkpot is dry. You fetch water from the communal jar 3 turns down the corridor past the shrine that nobody prays to anymore. The hallway smells of mildew, of wet wood and saltless tears. The walls here have watched hundreds of scholars pass and fail. Some went mad. Some simply stopped writing and vanished into the corners. You return. The ink is slow to mix. Cold water makes it sluggish. You stir in silence. The brush resists, as if it too is tired of serving meaning. Hours pass like fog, shapeless, damp, and forgettable. You copy lines from the Analects. You erase them, copy them again. Each stroke demands perfection, but you no longer remember what perfection means. Your father said it was obedience. Your tutor said it was clarity. The official examiner, you suspect, thinks it is absence an answer so blank it cannot offend. Your vision blurs. You close your eyes and whisper a phrase to yourself. When the net is cast, not all fish survive. It is not from the canon. It is from a letter your friend wrote before hanging himself. You were told not to speak of him. Your stomach aches, but you do not stop. Hunger is a teacher more reliable than any sage. You write until the muscles in your wrist burn, and your spine begins to fold like paper left in rain. And still you are not finished. The bell does not ring. It hasn't rung for months. Some say the official responsible for it died last spring. Others say the bell knows whose names will never be called and has learned mercy. You place your brush down. You breathe. There is no reward. Outside, the fog has lifted slightly. You glimpse the courtyard and the row of ginkgo trees, their leaves already yellowing, though summer clings to the air. You do not go out. 1 more hour, 1 more page, then tea, then more pages. Tomorrow someone else may pass, someone younger, brighter. But you will still be here rewriting this page, not because you believe, but because it is the only thing left that believes in you. The tea is weak, too weak. The leaves have been reused 3 times already. They taste like the memory of bitterness. You sip it anyway, because the ritual matters more than the taste. Afternoon settles over Nanjing like a heavy silk drape. The air thickens. Flies gather near the ink slab. You wave them away without looking. You've decided to copy a memorial from the Tang dynasty. It's about filial piety again. Always. As though loyalty to one's dead parents is enough to earn bread or escape or a name worth remembering. Your hand still trembles. The memorial is long, its sentences coiling with false humility. The author had already held 3 ranks when he wrote it, but he bows in every paragraph like a man who never stood up. It's not truth, you remind yourself. It's performance. And performance is all that's left. You pause. A voice outside speaks your name. Not a shout, not a whisper, just enough to freeze the blood in your spine. You step to the door, the brush still in your hand like a weapon you forgot how to use. It's your mother. She has walked an hour to bring you a boiled egg wrapped in cloth. One egg. Her feet are cracked, her robe sun-bleached. She does not enter the study chamber. She bows, hands trembling. You do not bow back. This is how it's done. She says, eat while it's warm. You nod. You do not say thank you. Gratitude is also ritual, and you have no brush to write it with. She leaves. The egg is soft and strange on your tongue. You chew slowly, as if the act itself must be remembered for future generations. You wonder what it cost to her, not the egg, but the distance, the silence, the look in her eyes when you didn't pass last year. You return to your seat. A fly has drowned in the ink. You do not remove it. Instead, you begin copying the commentary of Ju Shi on the doctrine of the mean. It's dry, utterly. It is the sandpaper that smooths ambition down to dust. Your calligraphy falters. First line, the superior man does not depart from the mean. Second line, the mean is the path of heaven. Third line, nothing. The ink pools refusing to obey. You stare at the empty space. How many superior men do you know? Not one. Not among your peers who eat paper and spit envy. Not among your elders who pass students for gifts and drink poetry like wine. And certainly not among the officials who send rejection slips with the same handwriting every year. Still you write. Evening creeps in with the scent of dust and plum bark. Someone nearby is burning incense. Not for the gods, but for the insects. The mosquitoes are returning. You light your own coil. Its smoke coils upward, thin and cynical. You do not look at the sky. Scholars are told not to dream of stars. Stars are for poets and generals, people allowed to fail publicly. You are not. Instead, you open the drawer. Inside 5 rejection slips. 3 scrolls half finished. 1 letter from a friend who passed the Juran exam and now lives in Suzhou. He describes the city as a place where lanterns never extinguish and courtesans debate Laozi with tea merchants. You envy him. Then you fold the letter and put it away. No use poisoning yourself with what you cannot become. You turn the page. Again. The ink has begun to thicken with heat. You add water. It dilutes everything, even your will. Someone knocks. It is not your mother. It is your roommate, or rather, your neighbor. A man with sunken cheeks and haunted eyes. He says nothing, just slides a copy of his essay beneath your door. You take it, read it. He wants your opinion. It's brilliant. You hate it. The syntax is perfect. His arguments are daring. He references the Book of Rites and Zhuangzi without conflict. Even the metaphors have grace. You could never write this. You write, well done on a scrap and return it. He will not sleep tonight. He will rewrite it 20 times. You know this because you will too. Everyone does. You look at your own essay, the one you thought was decent this morning. Now it looks childish. The logic doesn't flow. The lines sag like rotten beams. Your metaphors are leaden. Your confidence vanishes with 1 page of another man's ink. You start again. There is no time for rage, only ink. The sun is gone now. The lamp burns low. Your hand cramps again. You do not stop. If you rest, someone else gets ahead. If you sleep, your ancestors turn in their graves. There is a story about a scholar who studied so hard he went blind, but passed the exam by reciting texts from memory. There is a story about a scholar who failed so many times he set himself on fire at the gates of the Ministry of Rites. You wonder which story yours will become. Your head begins to nod. You fight it. Shake the fatigue off like a fever. You whisper the lines aloud. To study and not think is a waste. To think and not study is dangerous. You do not know which you've been doing. You no longer care. The essay is finished. It is 842 characters. You needed 850. You add a meaningless sentence to fill the gap. It feels like betrayal, but you've done it before. You dry the scroll, fold it, place it under your mat where rats will not chew it. Outside someone screams. It is the neighbor, the brilliant one. You hear his sobbing. It rises briefly, then falls into stillness. No one goes to check. This is normal. You whisper a line from the Mencius, he who exhausts himself on the way may yet collapse. You lie down, you stare at the dark. Tomorrow you begin again. You wake with the ache of muscle memory before dawn ever returns. Hunger has become your constant companion, a low growl in your belly that never ceases even when your body finally gives in to fractured dreams. Today, as yesterday and the day before, your meal arrives on a wooden tray slid beneath the door. It is a bowl of cold rice and a sliver of pickled cabbage, thin, yellowed and whispering of last season's harvest. You lift the lid. Steam does not rise. The chill bites at your fingertips. The rice grains clump together like tombstones. You eat anyway, because if you do not, the hunger will settle deeper into your bones, like frost in abandoned cellars. In some halls of the Ming examination system, candidates died quietly of starvation. Between sittings, their names never mentioned again. You have heard stories of men who consumed their own hair to fill the emptiness. You touch your forehead hair still clinging to your scalp for now. The cabbage is sour and salty. It burns your tongue. You swallow it raw, without mastication, to end the ritual faster. You do not chew. Chewing wastes time, and time is the only thing you do not possess. As you eat, you glance at the chipped bowl off-white porcelain with a faint crack running like a scar. Someone before you must have dropped it, perhaps another scholar, another hushed failure. You imagine the hands that once cradled it, cold trembling. Historians still wonder whether exam candidates in certain provinces receive secret supplementary rations from local officials bribed by concerned families. No records survive, only rumors etched in poems of the disinherited. You do not have such benefactors. Your father's savings vanished with the registration fee. Your mother's prayers amount to empty bowls. You rise and bow to the tray. The gesture is pointless. No deity collects your devotion here, but you perform it out of habit. Ritual is the warp and weft of your existence. Without it, the walls would swallow you entirely. Outside the chamber, the midday sun leaks through an iron-barred window, painting pale stripes across the dusty floor. You slide the tray back. The attendant, a man with sunken eyes and crystallized sweat at his temples, retrieves it. You do not meet his gaze. Exchange of gratitude is forbidden. Too much talking is dangerous. The slightest comment about the food's quality can be construed as disrespect toward the examiner, and disrespect earns a scholar a penalty lash. Accounts from contemporaneous gazettes confirm. Scourging was still used in remote exam sites as late as 1532. You return to your desk. Hunger remains now sharpened by movement. Your stomach clenches, but your concentration must not waver. You dip your brush into the ink diluted as always, because ink itself has become a ration, and begin copying a chapter from the Rites of Joe. It describes the imperial cookhouse rows of slaves, culled from bandits and war captives, preparing meals for the court beneath watchful eunuchs. The efficiency is praised, the laborers never named. Your hand moves, but your mind drifts. You recall a lesser-known practice in some exam compounds. Low-ranking cooks were themselves failed candidates hired at half wages and assigned to feed their rivals. They ate scraps while you ate cabbage. You wonder if your meal was cooked by someone who once dreamed as you do now, someone who smoothed the rice only to see it returned cold, unpalatable. You finish the passage. The characters lean unsteady. You add water to your ink. It splashes onto the scroll, blurring one sentence. It reads, "The superior man regards the death of parents as a most solemn duty, a reminder that filial piety demands sacrifice." You circle the blot with a shaky stroke, acknowledging that duty has already devoured your life. A sudden hush falls over the corridor. You look up. The barred window shows movement, 2 officials in black robes passing below. They carry scroll cases and an air of finality. Their footsteps echo not toward you, but toward the main hall. They come and go, deciding futures in sealed rooms. You will not see them. You will only feel the aftermath acceptance slips stamped in vermilion, or the absence of paper which speaks louder than any rejection. You slide the chapter aside. On the floor near your mat, a shape shifts. You look, but see nothing. Then the smell stale vegetable oil and damp straw. It's the scent you associate with peasants billeted to supply exam sites. They sleep in cellars outside, tending fires, fetching water. Sometimes they barter stale bread for scraps from your bowl. You have never given them more than a nod, but they know you. They know you starve in ritual silence. You stand. Your knees creak. Hunger still gnaws. There is no midday recess. There is only another hour to copy from the record of rights. You approach the window. Outside the courtyard is empty. The ginkgo trees stand pale and silent. A single leaf drifts down, landing on the sill. It is brittle, ancient. You pick it up. It crumbles in your fingers. You let it fall. Back at your desk, you resume writing. Each line is a small triumph and a growing despair. The words pile like stones on your mind. You think of the scholar who collapsed in the exam hall and was carried out as a corpse, his name stricken from the list. No one knows why he died: fever, hunger, a broken heart. You tighten your robe and whisper, "Not me." Yet your palms are cold and your face feels feverish. A bell tolls faraway signal for the cooks to prepare the evening meal. It is not for you. You will receive nothing until tomorrow's dawn. The echo settles in the corridor like a tolling mortality, reminding you that time here is measured by absence. You trace the characters you copied with your finger. They are dry, etched into the parchment. You press your lips to the scroll, tasting the faint sourness of aged ink. It sticks to your tongue. You pull away. The taste lingers. You stand and stretch. Your back cracks hollow and brittle. You step to the door and crouch, pressing your ear against the wood. No voices, no movement. Only the distant clatter of cooking pots and the hollow sound of emptiness. You retreat. You return to the seat. You dip your brush into the last sliver of ink. You write one more line: "He who endures to the end is saved." But salvation here is a myth. The sentence trembles on the paper as if it might vanish. You sign your name below it, a name the examiner will never read. You close your eyes for a moment. You hear nothing but your own heartbeat, slow and insistent. Hunger has sharpened your senses. Every sound echoes. Every drop of sweat feels like betrayal. You open your eyes. The rice bowl sits empty, its crack now filled with dust. You floor your palm against the wood, feeling its cold grain. It reminds you of prison bars. You return to your mat. You curl into a ball, clutching the scroll to your chest. You whisper the words from the classic of poetry. In the small hours the spirit wanders. Your spirit wanders here between meals, between breaths, between hope and oblivion. The lamp guttering shadows across the room. You let the last light fade from your eyes. Tomorrow, another day of ghosts and rice. You do not remember finishing the rice. You do not remember lifting the bowl. But your hands are sticky, and the pale film on your tongue tastes of salt and iron. The narrow cell where you write more crypt than chamber has no windows. The light comes only from above a thin shaft of sun that barely dares to touch your scrolls. As noon slides toward afternoon, even that light recoils, abandoning you to the slow, airless hours that scholars call the fourth gate. Most fail before it. Your fingers ache, not from the cold, but from the endless dry repetition of characters that no longer mean anything. You copy them as if through water. You forget what dynasty it is. You forget your own name. But you remember Confucius. You always remember Confucius. You remember how he wrote of duty like a prayer, and how his own descendants starved to death in times when rice was hoarded and scholars were treated like rats. No one tells you this when you enter. They speak only of honor. You try to move your wrist, but the pain is spreading now, sharp and stiff like old rope. You use your other hand even though it blots the ink. No examiner will care. They do not read your soul in the calligraphy. They only count the number of correct answers. A single mistake and you'll fail like the others, like your cousin, like your uncle, like that scholar in the next row whose head lolled forward before noon, who has not moved since. No one checks. There is a saying among the exam scribes, a body that still bleeds may pass the next round. You wonder if they are joking. The characters blur. You pause to blink. But blinking is dangerous. You've seen what happens when the lids grow heavy. You saw a man dragged out, head hanging at the wrong angle, mouth open like a broken flute. No one screamed. Even the guards walk softly here. It is said quietly that some of the invigilators are not men, that they were scholars once too long ago. Their minds hollowed by too many characters, too many winters, too much silence. Now they patrol the cells with faces hidden behind cloth, holding no lanterns. The air dims when they pass. Pens falter. You do not wish to see them again. Instead, you try to write something clever. A quote, a synthesis, the kind that earns polite nods and quiet advancement. But the ink runs dry, not the brush your mind. You search for meaning and find only forms. Skeletons of thought, bones without flesh. Your teacher once told you the classics are rivers. Now they are tombs, and you are drowning in dust. Your mouth begins to twitch. That same involuntary tick that plagued your father near the end, when his eyes went glassy and he mistook the family dog for the village magistrate. You're too young to be haunted, and yet the ghosts line up just behind your shoulder. You can feel them breathing on your ink. Someone coughs. Not the sick kind, not even the dying kind. This cough sounds rehearsed, timed. And then it comes again, lower, slower, followed by 3 taps. You do not turn. You are not supposed to. You are never supposed to. But you feel it, someone trying to communicate. The great silence of the examination hall was born under Emperor Yongle. No speaking, no moving, no disobedience. He decreed that knowledge must be born from within, not shared in whispers like street market bargains. But some still try. The tapping returns, this time behind you. Different rhythm, different hands. Another scholar, a different code. You wonder how many of them are still alive. How many are ghosts tapping from habit. You dip your brush again, slower now, pretending to write while your ears take notes. But even this quiet resistance breaks you, because now the silence isn't passive, it's listening back. And in that silence something moves, not loudly, just enough. Your brush stills. There's no wind in the cell, but one of your scrolls begins to curl at the edge like it's shrinking from something unseen. You hear nothing yet. Your chest grows tight. You sense a presence near your writing desk, a weight just outside your vision. You do not turn. You will not turn. But you do shut your eyes. And in that moment you see your own name written in red. Not the red of correction, the red of blood, fresh, still warm, across your final answer sheet. Historians still debate whether the examination cells of Nanjing were haunted or simply built wrong. Narrow and uneven, some of them collapsed in the rain, killing dozens. Others were found centuries later with dried skin still stuck to the floorboards. But some records mention a different kind of rot, the kind that forms not on the body, but in the soul of a man who was forced to memorize virtue in a cage. You don't write again until the shaft of light disappears completely. You no longer remember which essay you are on. You only know that when you wake, if you do, you will have to begin again. And the scroll will be clean, as if nothing had ever been written, as if none of this ever happened. Your dreams are not dreams. They are murmurings of those who failed before you, brushing against the corners of your mind as you lie on the damp mat. You wake before dawn, shaken by words you cannot understand, ancient dialects, half-forgotten prayers, pleas for mercy in voices that belong to no living man. You lie still, afraid to move lest their hollow calls slip into speech and condemn you. You rise at last, muscles stiff as broken branches. A thin mist clings to the chamber floor as if the room itself exhales regret. You light the lamp. Its flicker reveals traces of yesterday's tears, stains on the wall, dried in uneven streaks. You blot them with a scrap of rag, but the dampness returns by midday, bleeding through the plaster like sorrow. You break your fast on a single steam bun, dense, doughy, and nearly tasteless. You swallow it whole, as though chewing might summon the whispers back. The attendant returns your bowl with a curt nod. His eyes dart away. He senses them too, the whisperers between walls, the ones who never passed on. You sit to write. Before you, the scroll lies blank yet heavy. Today is the second day after the mid-exam break, when candidates are allowed one night outside the hall, but you did not leave. You chose to remain in the cells, reasoning that every moment outside was time lost. Others went to visit family shrines, to pray at temples, to bathe in hot springs. You stayed, and now you wonder if those were not the wise ones. You dip your brush. The ink is thin. Your hand trembles. You copy a stanza from the songs of Chu, an elegy for the dead. It speaks of shadows that walk at dusk unvisited by the living. Each character seems alive, twitching on the page. You recall that some tutors forbade this text, fearing it invited restless spirits. You chose it anyway, curious to see if the ghosts would answer. They do. As your brush strokes the final word, you hear a soft sigh directly behind you. Not a rustle of cloth, not the creak of a floorboard, an exhalation as fragile as smoke. You freeze brush, hovering mid-air. The lamp's flame bends toward the sound, though the air is still. You close your eyes, trying to steady your breath. When you open them, nothing moves except the scroll. The last character trembles, ink pooling slightly at its base. You reach out, finger hovering above it, and feel a chill that is not from the room. You flinch back. A voice whispers your name, barely there, too distant, yet vivid. You do not recognize the tone, too hollow for any living scholar. It carries the faint echo of chaining, of confinement, of fear. You want to flee, but your body betrays you. You remain seated, heart rattling against your ribs. You swallow, lips cracking. You force yourself to finish the passage. Another stanza, this one about silent graves untouched by spring. You write it in perfect form, each stroke deliberate. The whisper grows into words forming a murmured question. When will your body rest? You do not answer. You dip your brush again, but the ink resists. It clots as though refusing complicity. You wait. The whisper recedes, leaving behind a weight in your chest. It is an accusation you are neither alive to learn nor dead to rest. Your eyes drift to the narrow slit of window. Outside, dawn has broken, fully pale and indifferent. The courtyard's ginkgo trees gleam with dew. A lone scholar walks beneath them, a thin figure in a grey robe. He pauses, head lifted, breathing in the morning air. You envy him. He has tasted freedom, however briefly. You return to your scroll. You write a marginal note. What is life if not a sequence of failed expectations? Then you erase it. Expectations are luxuries you cannot afford. You remember the rumour of a scholar who carved his epitaph on the wall of his chamber before the final essay was due, believing he would never leave. The characters remained long after he was gone, black and bold against white plaster, until the rooms were repainted in the 19th century. No trace remains now, only the story passed in whispers among tutors like a cautionary tale. You look at the wall where you sit and imagine your own epitaph. He waited too long for a pen's approval. You do not carve it. You cannot. No tool is sharp enough to pierce this silence. Instead, you write it on the manuscript and fold the paper, sealing it with a brush of water. It sticks like destiny. Time becomes a dim echo. Officials pass through at intervals you cannot mark. They move like ghosts themselves, white robes silent, confirming nothing and condemning almost all. You hear footsteps, then nothing. No announcement, no verdict, just the unending hush. Your bones ache in unison, as though they remember the bodies that fell before you. You close your eyes. The whisper returns, forcing its hand against your eyelids. A face forms in darkness, pale, hollow-eyed mouth curved in silent scream. You force the vision away. It lingers just beyond sight as the mirror image of your own fatigue. You open your eyes and write one final line in the margin. We become the dead when no one calls our name. You press your forehead to the scroll and exhale, hoping to breathe life into the ink. It does nothing. You stand. Your legs protest with every step. You bow to the scroll and to the room formal, mechanical, a final ritual of respect for the dead who still live here. Then you retreat to the corner, curling into yourself like a withered leaf. You clutch the manuscript to your chest, as though it might ward off the whispers. Beyond the chamber, the courtyard bell tolls the hour. It is imperfect, offbeat wavering, but to you it sounds like a requiem. You count its peals, 7, then 8, then 9 before it fades. You do not know which hour it marks. Time here is measured in failures, not minutes. You close your eyes again. The whispers persist, no longer distant, but a chorus within your skull. You have become one of them, and you haven't moved a muscle. You don't know how long you've been waiting. Your body still obeys the rhythm of the bell, though the bell itself has stopped. You sit cross-legged on the woven mat, unmoving hands folded over your knees. There is no writing paper now, no ink, no brushes, just the slow accumulation of dampness in the corners of your cell, and the mildew crawling from stone to skin. Somewhere down the corridor, you hear the faint shudder of a door. Not a creak. No, these doors don't creak. They slide with such deliberate weight that the sound comes like a cold breath through your bones. Another scholar taken or another returned. You never know which is worse. You still replay your final essay in your mind, over and over. Perhaps you spelled the word for rectitude incorrectly. Perhaps your argument on filial hierarchy contradicted a subtle regulation last updated in the 1430s. Perhaps there was never going to be a passing score for you. You stop halfway through the mental paragraph, then begin again. Each time it sounds weaker, more strained, more like a voice not your own. Outside, if you could see it, the sky would be dark again. Another day behind you, indistinguishable from the last. You remember when you first entered this place. The examination hall. Not just a hall, but a compound kilometers wide, endless rows of cells. You believed back then that it was a temple of fairness, that talent, patience, and perfect Confucian composition would raise your name into history. They did not tell you about the others, the names never called, the boys who vanished. They say that in earlier dynasties failure simply meant going home. But in the Ming, the silence around failure grew thick, suffocating. They didn't kill you. That would be too clean. Instead, they left you unspoken, unnamed, and increasingly uncertain whether you ever really arrived. There's a story they whisper not in official records, but among the older exam stewards, the ones who sweep without ever raising their eyes. A boy from Yunnan who wrote so well the examiner wept, but his conclusions strayed. He questioned the local governor's mandate. Not defiance, just doubt. And so his paper was burned. The steward who told you this had no name badge. He just stared as he said, "We keep the ashes." It's night again, or almost. You listen for rats in the thatch, but they've long since moved on to other cells. You haven't heard another voice in days. And then faintly something shifts, a bell, or something pretending to be one. The sound is thin wrong, like iron shivering under water. You rise not from habit, but from some other impulse buried beneath years of silence. You step outside your stone room. No steward awaits, no scroll, just a row of cells, most empty, some still sealed. A few doors are open inside them. The mats unrolled the ink stains, dried the calligraphy of failure etched into the walls by fingernail. No one walks the corridor, but you feel watched, not malevolently, not even curiously, just watched. As if the very examination itself has developed eyes. A breeze whispers down the stone path. It smells of damp rice, old paper, and something else. You stop at the center post. There, on a faded plaque, your name should have been carved. Candidates with distinction. But the wood is blank save for a gouge where someone else once scraped off the lacquer. You stay standing there a while, until your knees stiffen, until the last of the warmth inside you recedes. You are not dead, but you will not leave. No bell calls you. No official records note your status. You were a scholar once. Now you are part of the silence. The examination hall still stands, though few know what remains behind its sealed walls. Thousands passed through, but not all passed on. Some names were recorded. Others disappeared between scrolls, between lines, between the folds of the imperial mind, buried not in the earth but in protocols. You, who once wrote of filial piety and virtue, became another silent statistic. No accusation, no burial, no mourning, just absence. Perhaps your paper was too bold. Perhaps your dialect betrayed your province. Or perhaps no one ever read it at all. The stone floor where you waited still bears the faint stain of ink, though no one remembers the sentence. And now, each night when the wind shifts across the old courtyard, some claim to hear brushstrokes, written without hand. Welcome, midnight listeners. Tonight, we drift into a chapter of history that most would rather forget. You're not a knight, not a noble, not even a criminal by their laws. You are something less visible, less speakable, a gap in someone else's story. It begins with a man you'll never name sliding a folded cloth across the table. Inside a dagger, clean as silence, and a date written in soot. That's all. Before we drift deeper, consider marking this video for those who fall asleep best beside forgotten truths. Subscribe if you return nightly to the quiet horror of history. Let me know your local time, and if you're still awake at the end. Now exhale and let history's cold breath settle on your skin. It doesn't start with blood, it starts with absence. You leave your town without telling anyone because you weren't ever really there to begin with. Your name, your face, your habits, all of them have been slowly dissolved over the years, like salt in rain. By now you are only function, observe, approach, deliver. The man who gave you the cloth didn't blink. He didn't tell you who. He didn't need to. The silence told enough. In certain kingdoms, in certain years, silence itself is an order, and your work is nothing but obedience. You ride alone and you never look back. Not because you're brave, but because turning around would make it real. The towns you pass are faceless. They all have the same kind of mud, the same smell of bread and dung, the same children with red cheeks staring too long. You ignore them all. Your presence is brief, not sharp, not sudden, just a shadow that doesn't return at sunset. The closer you get, the quieter your heartbeat becomes. You've learned to slow your breath until it almost ceases. Not for stealth, for survival. The body adapts. It learns to resemble the job. Your target is a minor noble, not known for cruelty, not remembered for kindness. That's why they're chosen. A quiet man. The kind who dies with barely a ripple. The hardest part isn't the approach, it's the waiting. For 3 days you sleep under broken walls. You memorize guard rotations by counting birds. You learn the sound of your own breath too well. You whisper nothing to no one. And on the 4th night you walk. You do not run. Running makes sound. You do not crouch. Crouching draws attention. You walk like one who belongs, and history rewards such liars. Inside the house, the floor groans like an old man remembering things he shouldn't. The door isn't locked. Most weren't in those days, the illusion of order replacing true safety. He's asleep, alone. You were told to make it silent, so you do. You pinch the nose, you press the pillow. You watch, you wait. The body twitches once like a question, then not again. You leave nothing, you touch nothing, you become nothing. By morning, in the town is slightly different. Not louder, just tighter. Everyone knows something happened. They just don't know what. You sit at a table, you chew something dry, you drink something warm. You hear the name mentioned once. He didn't come down for prayers. Then again, he never missed a morning. But no one says what they think, because in that place at that time, no one dares to guess aloud who dies by silence. A week later, you receive a nod from a man in a faded cloak. That's your payment. That's your proof. There is no coin. Coin is traceable. There is no parchment. Paper burns. Just a nod. Just a face you don't recognize telling you your work is remembered by someone who will never thank you. You leave again. Different road, different dust. But your breath is still the same. Shallow, measured, waiting. Historians still debate whether these assassins were ever truly organized, or simply a string of desperate men manipulated into usefulness. Some argue they were tools of the church. Others say they were mercenaries, but no one agrees on what they called themselves, because they never wrote anything down, and those who spoke died second. You do not dress like yourself anymore. Your clothes belong to the road, your posture to the trade. You've learned to walk like a monk, to eat like a clerk, to nod like a man with purpose. Every day you change something. A limp here, a cough there, a line recited in the wrong dialect to invite correction. You invite attention briefly so they remember that other man, not you. The mask is never physical. Cloth is unreliable. The true disguise is posture, intention, rhythm. You wear identities like borrowed coats, warm for a time but always someone else's. This week you're a stonemason's apprentice. Next week, a seller of beeswax. 2 months ago, a mute pilgrim with a bandaged jaw and nothing to offer but silence. You wore that one well. At some point you stop remembering your real voice. When you try to speak as yourself, it feels like your throat is lying. There is a woman in a village near the border who thinks she knows you. She smiled when you passed through last year. You had no name then. You had no mission, but your hands had stopped shaking for once. That night you shared bread, shared a fire. She told you her father died in the war. You said nothing. She didn't mind. You remember that more clearly than your own childhood. You also remember choosing not to return. You are called again, this time to a port town. Salt air and rotting fish. Your target is not noble, just inconvenient. A merchant who carries letters for the wrong people beneath sacks of dried fruit. He's clever. He hires guards. He changes ships. You watch, you wait. And in that wait, you adopt someone new again. This time you are a fisherman's boy. You carry buckets. You wipe blood from nets. You smell like salt, sleep and wind. No one suspects you. No one looks at you. That is what makes the work so easy and so unbearable. You learn that masks don't come off when the job ends. They rot onto you. They become part of the skin. You no longer react to children's laughter. You no longer respond when someone drops your true name by accident because they never do. You kill the merchant on a Sunday morning. He's hungover. His guard is still asleep. You slip the blade between ribs with a familiarity that startles even you. The wound doesn't kill him immediately. He reaches out. Not to fight, not to beg, just reaching. As if confused why you're there. His blood smells like wine and iron. You step back carefully, silently, into a crowd that's already begun to form. No one says your name. They just scream someone else's. Later, in a tavern 2 towns away, you overhear the rumor. Did you hear they say it was the barmaid? No, her brother. Jealousy. Always is. And just like that, someone else wears the guilt you left behind. Historians still wonder if medieval assassins suffered from what we now call disassociation, or if their minds simply adapted to survive the shifting roles. Some left behind journals unsigned, filled with alternating voices. Others were only remembered in trial transcripts as shadows no one saw until too late. You sleep that night in someone else's clothes. You wake without knowing whose name to answer to. And worse, you no longer mind. There are different kinds of doors. Some you break, some you pick. Some you simply walk through because someone forgets that not all locks are made of wood and iron. Some are made of trust, and those are the easiest to open. You're in a cold province now. Fog rests on the ground like old wool. You've been here a week, pretending to be a wandering monk with a limp. You carry a wooden rosary with no cross. You say nothing. You're offered food out of pity. Bread tastes like kindness, which is harder to chew than bone. The house you've been watching is 3 stories tall, but only 2 are lit. The top level is storage. You counted the crates during a staged fall. The middle floor is the study. The bottom is servants. Your target is an advisor, a reader of letters, a handler of truths. He's done nothing wrong. That's never the point. He simply saw something he shouldn't, and your task is to ensure he never sees again. You've watched him write. He pauses often, not out of confusion, but caution. He reads what he writes, then rewrites it. That makes your job harder. People who reread fear consequences. It is a Thursday when the wind turns and the choice is made. You approach the house with wet feet and hands that don't shake anymore. A kitchen boy opens the back door, sees your monk's robe and opens wider. He thinks you're here for scraps. You bow. He's not wrong. Inside, the air is thick with rosemary and ink. The stairs creak only once. The sound lodges in your chest like a held breath. He is in the study alone, as you knew he would be. He does not hear you. The fireplace is warm. The parchment glows. Your shadow joins his before your body does. You do not speak. Assassins are not confessors. You slip behind him, and in that instant he turns. You see his eyes. They are not afraid. They are exhausted. He does not reach for a weapon. He does not shout. He only says, "I wondered when," then closes his eyes. You make it fast, but not clean. The quill he held spills across the parchment. The blood too. You leave it, because cleaning would mean he mattered. You exit through a different door. You touch nothing. You see no one. And still, when you sleep that night in a hayloft, the sound that haunts you isn't the body falling. It's the whisper, "I wondered when," because he knew. He always knew, and said nothing, like you. To some chronicles from that period, they mention an advisor who vanished midwinter, leaving half a letter on his desk. Scholars debate whether it was a political purge or a private act of vengeance. But the oddest note is this. The letter ends mid-sentence. No blood on the page, no footprints outside. And yet, the candle was still lit when servants found the room. Still burning, still silent. You wake in the dark and stare at your hands. They are steady. But your ears ring not from sound, but the absence of it. The moment before breath, the gap before a scream, the stillness of the locked door behind you. You realize now you don't fear noise. You fear the silence that agrees with what you've done. Knives are too loud in certain houses, especially in those where the target is old, beloved, or watched. So the dagger stays wrapped in cloth, and you begin learning the art of patience measured in drops. Your hands smell like copper now, not from blood, but from brass, the tiny weights, the corked glass, the rim of the pestle ground too many times against bitter seed. The assassin's poison is never theatrical. It is not green or bubbling or smoking in ornate flasks. It is dust-paste oil. It travels folded into cheese, stirred into honey, painted along the rim of a wine cup that no servant would dare to taste. And yet, for all your precision, it is your own throat you fear most. You once watched a colleague, another faceless whisper like yourself, test a new mixture on his fingertip. Just a prick, just a dab. He coughed for 3 days before silence found him. No burial, no record. His bag was burned. The fire stank of regret. You remember his name more clearly than your own, because it was the last name you ever spoke aloud. Your new target lives in a cloistered estate near the river. He drinks only from one cup, silver rim slightly chipped. He eats figs with every meal, claiming they keep his mind sharp. His guards call him father. He is not a priest, but he listens to confessions. His crime: he overheard a prince speaking freely after wine and did not forget it. Memory is treason when you are not permitted to remember. You infiltrate as a gardener. Old boots, broken hat limb shoulder. No one pays attention to those who dig for a living. It takes 8 days to learn the pattern of the meals, 3 more to find where the wine is kept, and 1 long night to decide how to reach the cup. You use a reed to siphon a small amount from the bottle. You mix it with oil pressed from bitter almonds, the old kind, the illegal kind. It smells faintly of nothing, but it sings in the blood. You test it on a stray dog. You apologize after. The animal doesn't understand, but you do. On the 12th day, the poison enters the house. It doesn't knock. It doesn't scream. It rides in quietly, like fog beneath the threshold. You coat the rim of the cup just before dawn. A servant sees you. You smile. She nods. She thinks you are polishing silver. You are in a way. He drinks by noon, and by evening he is gone. Not dead. Not yet. He begins forgetting his own name. He begins calling the guards by numbers. He asks for figs but chews air. By the 3rd day, he screams into his pillow, naming birds that no longer fly in that region. By the 4th, he is cold stiff and forgotten. The guards burn the linens. You're already gone. On a boat, with your vials wrapped in wool and your hands raw from scrubbing. Because this poison lingers.
Verpassen.
Historians still puzzle over a string of nobles who died in the same year, not of wounds, but of sudden senseless madness. Theories range from mold in wine casks to cursed manuscripts. But one chronicler, a monk who later vanished, wrote a margin note beside one such death. He forgot the word for fig. Then he forgot the word for mercy. You sleep with a vial tied to your ankle now, a last gift for yourself, should your work ever be turned back on you. You hope it is quick. You hope you remember why. No grave bears your name. No chronicle records your life. Even your enemies never knew your face. That was the plan. But there's a cost to vanishing, and it's paid in pieces, slow, silent, irretrievable. Your newest assignment takes you into a city wrapped in red stone and superstition. They say the streets remember footsteps here, and the walls whisper things that didn't happen. You do not believe in ghosts, but you check your shadow twice a day. Your target is not a man. It is a line of words, a decree copied by too many hands, read by too many ears. An idea too heavy to burn, but too dangerous to live. This time, you are sent not to kill a body, but to remove the seed before it takes root. Erase the scroll. Destroy the record. End the messenger. The scribe is elderly. He hums when he works. You watch him for a week. He writes too slowly to be dangerous, but the words he copies treason by definition are not his own. Still, someone decided his hands must be punished. You wait until he is alone. Late afternoon. Rain. The air smells like damp parchment. When you enter, he turns and smiles. Another reader, he asks. You nod. He offers tea. You kill him with no resistance. His last breath is quiet, not fearful, just tired. You burn the scrolls. You scatter the ashes into the river. You wipe the soot from your fingertips and leave the way you came, nameless. Later that month, a priest asks aloud, what happened to the man who copied the forbidden line? And no one answers. Because no one remembers. No trial, no punishment, no record. Even the decree is gone now. Even the law it opposed has changed. And no one remembers the name of the thing you killed. Only you do. But even that fades. You find a stone later in another town. Buried at the base of a ruined wall, half cracked with a mark scratched into it. Not a letter, not quite. You think it may be your symbol. You think you may have left it there years ago. You sit by it for an hour. The wind passes, nothing stirs. Then you rise and do not look back. Historians found no records of a scribe's death in that city for the year in question, but a burned fragment of parchment was discovered under a collapsed roof nearby. Its ink had been scrubbed, re-inked and scraped again. Only one line could be made out, barely etched into the fibers. To erase a word is to kill its future. Who wrote it? Who buried it? No one knows. But the handwriting doesn't match the scribe's. You dream less now, or rather you dream the same dream over and over. You are standing at a grave with no headstone. You ask whose it is, but no voice answers. And then you wake up, alone, remembering only the smell of burnt ink. There's no one left to assign you names. No orders arrive, no nods, no folded cloth. You are still alive, and that is the problem. You thought this would feel like freedom. Instead, it feels like standing in a hallway with no doors. The kind of silence that pushes back when you breathe. It has been months since your last task, or maybe years. You stopped marking time when your reflection began to shift. In the polished iron of your knife, you glimpse a stranger. He moves like you, frowns like you, but his eyes know too much. You try to live like other men. You mend roofs, you clean stables, you smile at market stalls. But people glance twice at you as if their minds itch when you're near. They do not see a killer. They see a space where someone should be. That somehow is worse. One night you hear a voice call your name. Not the one you were born with, the other one. The one you never said aloud. You walk into the dark following it. There is a rumor of a monastery carved into a mountain. No bells, no light, only silence. They say those who seek to forget themselves go there, not for redemption, but for unmaking. You climb. Your boots bleed against stone. Your fingers lose feeling. And yet the higher you go, the less the world seems real. The gate is open. No guards. Only a figure in grey mouth, hidden eyes shut. He does not ask why you came, only nods. Inside, there are no mirrors, only water. Still cold water. You are told to sit and remember everything you've done, then forget it all. You try, but memory is a weapon you can no longer set down. Days pass. You are given no name, no food unless you ask, no warmth unless you earn it. The silence wraps around you like a second skin. It peels away everything false, and then keeps peeling. You begin speaking aloud, not to others, but to the walls. You say things you didn't know you remembered. Names, faces, screams that never made it out of mouths. The others there nod when you speak, because they know they've all killed something. Some of them killed themselves just slower. One night you rise. You walk to the pool of water in the courtyard. Moonlight reveals nothing in your reflection. No features, no edges, only a shimmer. A memory of a man. You do not panic. You expected this. This was always the last task to remove the assassin. Not by death, by forgetting. But there's a whisper behind your shoulder. A breath too familiar. You turn. No one there. Only the smell of rosemary. Only the weight of a dagger you didn't bring. Only your own voice echoing something you never meant to say. I wondered when. Historians still debate the purpose of the silent mountain sanctuaries that appeared in the late medieval period. Some believe they were heretical retreats. Others say they were hospitals for the mind. but one record half burned mentions an unnamed figure who arrived, stayed 6 winters and vanished without ever speaking. He left behind a single page pinned to the wall. The last man I killed wore my face. He forgave me.
Netto.
You are gone now. No footprints, no shadow, only stillness where you once stood. And if someone listens closely long after midnight, they might still hear the faint scrape of a knife being placed down, forever. No one remembers how many you killed. No one knows why you began. The bodies are buried, the records are ash, and your names, all of them, fell silent before they were spoken twice. But history does not need to remember a man to feel his weight. The ink you erased left gaps. The blood you spilled left absences. The silences you created echoed longer than screams ever could. And yet the greatest horror is this: even you forgot why you started. In the end, it wasn't vengeance, it wasn't orders, it wasn't even fear. It was routine, like sharpening a blade, like folding cloth, like listening for footsteps that never came. Now there is nothing left but stillness. No name, no voice, no reflection. Just history wondering faintly coldly if the last assassin ever truly stopped.